My name is Edom Baheru. I'll be presenting to you two poems that I wrote today. So this one is the most recent one, which kind of came to me right now. It's called Home is Where I Have a Voice, because I see a lot of beautiful women here with a voice. I studied architecture. And so most people expect me to define home as 4 columns connected with 4 beams cladded with walls, either dry or cement. Then on top covered by a waterproof material that can withstand the heat of the sun or the wet of the winter. Practical. But I'm not an architect. I'm a performer and a writer. So home is the blank canvas that my pen dances on. The mic I speak into at my greatest moments with an audience. At my semi-normal moments into the phone recording mic on my phone. My mother still thinks that the person did not do his job right. Home is where I have a voice. I am an events coordinator, so I don't only define home as the place I have a voice, I also define it for others as a place where they have a voice. Yeah, I'm bossy like that. And I'm a friend. So home is any table my friends and I are sitting around discussing whichever silly thing is bothering us that day. We still have not figured out who is the biggest Harry Potter nerd. Well, I have. It's me. They just haven't agreed yet. I'm bossy. I'm a daughter. So home is where I have the luxury to give any advice to my parents. My dad is not happy that I convinced him to get a 4th TV. Regardless, when I'm talking, I'm in my element. When I'm listening, I'm in the moment. When I'm writing, I'm comfortable. When I'm singing, I'm terrible. When I'm here on stage with you, strung to the threads of my thoughts, I'm home. But sadly, home is not all flowers and rainbows, like I just said, even though, thanks to my parents, my life is. So the next one is named The Unconventional Ways of Self-Defense You Learn While Traveling Alone as a Woman. It's not enough. I was a rebellious child. Don't laugh, because it's easy to be rebellious when your parents agree with everything you say and do. My father would enroll me into advanced English, and I would say, nope, I'm studying the violin. He would throw at me every relative in his corner to make me change my mind, and then the next day he would say, fine, go with God. My mother would say, you should learn how to make meals. You should be a cook. And I'm like, nope, learning Taekwondo. Hiya! She would go to father. He would throw at me every relative in his corner to make me change my mind. And then the next day he would say, fine, go with God. I'll pay for your tuition if you go to med school, become a doctor. Nope, studying architecture. Continue with French. Nope, I'm studying Mandarin. The Chinese are going to take over. It's 25 years later, and I am an events coordinator, not an architect. I cannot read a musical note, like I said, terrible at singing. I write poetry, and I only speak Amharic and English, and it takes 5 seconds for my flight or fight to kick in. So much for Taekwondo. But I'm also a kick-ass cook, so I guess school is for suckers, right? Yes. Point is, I was raised in freedom. As free as one can be when you are a woman in a man's world, and there's nothing you can do without hard fights each day to assert your freedom. At best, to strangers. At worst, to yourself. I was also raised to always be kind. My mother said, especially when it takes a lot to be kind, because that is when it's needed the most. And so, the first time a Rwandan hood boy grabbed my hands on the streets, looked at me with lustful eyes, licking his lips and asked, "Not Saatize?" I I could not swallow because my dry mouth seemed as though it would crack if I tried. It felt so hard to be nice under those eyes, but I simply took out my phone and I replied to his question with a smile, which he mistook for giving him a go-ahead to grab at my waist. Second time, a random hood boy grabbed me by my hand in the streets and looked at me with lustful eyes and said, I simply took out the fife I had and I smiled and I said, I'm Switzerland, yes. Didn't look him in the eyes. And he mistook that for fear. So now every time I'm walking on the streets and I see a man walk toward me, I make a note to keep my eyes down and my hands close to my body. When I was planning my trip to India with my friends, the first 7 links on Google search were warnings of gang rape. And so we moved in groups of 9, so no little piggy had to go to the market alone. We used to pose in threes as if we were taking selfies while we were taking a sneak snap at the guy sitting in the bus seat next to us, just to prove. We utilized our mother language to a full drop. I'm an English writer. My mother is an Amharic teacher, and she prepared me for this through the heat of May, and so I will be damned if my mother tongue did not save me today. Kinda utilized. Make sure you make friends with the corner bake shop owner and their families because you never know when you need to cover from the hostilities. Or act like you're a sweet tourist that does not know English. Maybe they'll take pity. Cat called in the streets and you blame yourself for coming out the house looking all pretty. But hold on. This fright is not indigenous to India, nor is it a vacation burden. This is what all birds feel walking past the lion's den, walking fast, keys clutched between our fingers, fists clutched. Calculating how much is worth in your bag ain't much compared to your life. Because your life is not worth much compared to your honor, because we grew up in a home that belittled rape survivor and honored the corpse of a murder victim. And so I would rather be caught dead in the morrow than be caught with a baby with no father to borrow, because I grew up in a society that takes pride in looking down at a 14-year-old girl with blood dripping down her legs, and yet they praise a grown man who feels entitled to give distinction to what continues to be pain, and what should be regarded as, hey, we're just playing. And so, we have unconventional teachers of self-defense when traveling alone. Our minds, brought up in a home of labels, we learn profiling from like a younger age. To this day, when I find myself in a minibus with no other passenger but me, the driver and the assistant, my eyes dart to the dashboard, to the front window, looking for stickers, desperately searching for any sign of religious submission. Because until 2 years ago, I had never heard of a priest raping a child on the same church stage that he serves mass at. And it will take another 20 years to unlearn this profile. When I find myself walking alone at night and on a deserted road, my eyes desperately look for an elderly man, preferably with like a white beard, looking like a grandpa, not too old that he can't run to me even like when I need him to. Because until 7 years ago, I had never heard of a grandpa who violates his 8-month-old granddaughter, and so an elder predator was not a profile that I had registered. Nowadays, I'm better, because nowadays I'm skeptical. I second guess the actions of the beggar who comes at me with stretched hands, because most times they're not stretched hands tend to grab. So I prefer to walk with my hands crossed. Nowadays, I'm on trust lane. I measure up the size and body mass of the distant cousin visiting our home, wondering if he came to my room uninvited, can I take him? I could probably kick him in the balls. Or at least am I fast enough to make a getaway? Maybe out the window? I can unbar the window, right? Nowadays, I spend a lot of time talking to myself like that. Will this ever change? Will we ever be trained enough? Will we ever have the luxury to unlearn the profiles? Or will we continue making nail polish that changes color when dipped into a drink that you should not be drinking? Will we have better stories to share with our kids on our bar time? Or will I have to teach my daughters the same unconditional moves of self-defense? That's what I talk to myself about at night. How about you?